8 months ago, I had a business I'd spent 6 years building, a husband I thought was my partner in every sense of the word, and a sister-in-law who called me every Sunday just to check in. I lost all 3 of them inside of 30 days. I want to say it happened suddenly, but that's the lie I told myself for a long time. The truth is, there were signs everywhere. I just loved the people holding them too much to read what they said. My name is Lena. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my adult life, I ran a small event planning company out of Asheville, North Carolina. Nothing glamorous, corporate retreats, nonprofit fundraisers, the occasional wedding that paid the bills for 2 months. I'd started it out of my spare bedroom with $1,100 and a laptop that overheated if I ran more than 3 tabs. By year 4, I had 3 part-time employees and a real office on Lexington Avenue with a window that looked out onto a parking garage, and I was proud of that window. I'd earned that parking garage view. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he was, came into my life at a Chamber of Commerce mixer when I was 31. He was charming the way that some people are charming before you understand what's underneath it. Confident. Well-dressed. He had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, and I mistook that for intimacy for a very long time. We got married after 2 years. His sister stood up with us at the ceremony. She gave a toast about how she'd never seen her brother look at anyone the way he looked at me. I think about that toast a lot now. His sister, I'll call her my sister-in-law, had become one of my closest friends by the time everything fell apart. We texted almost every day. She knew my business better than most people who actually worked for me. She knew our cash flow, our client list, our contracts. She knew which vendors we owed money to and which ones owed us. I told her everything because I trusted her, and I trusted her because she was family, and I thought family meant something. I was wrong about that too. The first sign I missed was a meeting. About 14 months before the collapse, my husband started attending more of my client calls. He said he wanted to understand my business better, wanted to be supportive. I thought it was sweet. He started suggesting I bring in a business development partner, someone to help me scale, he said. He had someone in mind. A woman he'd worked with years ago. Smart, connected, exactly what my company needed. I said I'd think about it. I should have kept thinking. Her name was Vivienne. She was polished in the way that makes you second-guess your own competence. She came in, looked at everything I built, and told me it was beautiful but inefficient. She had ideas. She had contacts. She had energy I didn't know I was supposed to have. I brought her on as a 30% partner in exchange for her network and a capital injection of $40,000 she said she'd wire within 60 days. The wire never came, but her access to my business did. Over the next 8 months, Vivienne systematically redirected 3 of my largest corporate clients to a new LLC she had quietly incorporated 2 months before she ever walked into my office. I didn't know about the LLC. I didn't know that my husband had been listed as a silent partner in it since before she and I even shook hands. I didn't know that while I was running myself into the ground trying to make the partnership work, the 2 of them were building a replacement company using everything I'd shared. I found out on a Tuesday in March. A longtime client, a woman who ran a nonprofit I'd worked with for 4 years, called me directly, not through the business line. She sounded uncomfortable. She said she'd received paperwork transferring her account to a new firm, and the paperwork had my husband's name on it. She wanted to make sure I knew. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat at my desk for a long time, looking at the parking garage. Then I went home and I asked my husband about it. He didn't even try very hard to lie. He said it was complicated. He said the business wasn't going anywhere, that I'd been struggling for years, that he'd just been trying to protect our financial future. He said Vivienne understood the market in ways I didn't. He said a lot of things in the same calm voice people use when they've already decided you don't deserve the truth delivered with any particular care. I asked him how long. He said it didn't matter. I asked him if his sister knew. He was quiet for just a second too long, and that second told me everything. I left that night with a suitcase and my laptop in my car. I checked into a Comfort Inn off I-26 with a debit card that had $412 on it, because I had been so focused on keeping my business alive that I hadn't paid attention to our joint accounts being slowly drained over the prior 3 months. The account I'd used for payroll had been transferred to a new signatory, him, after I'd added him to it 2 years earlier because he said it was good planning in case something happened to me. Nothing had happened to me, except him. The Comfort Inn room smelled like industrial cleaner and something underneath it I didn't want to identify. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to call my sister-in-law because she was the person I called when things went wrong. And then I remembered that second of silence when I'd asked if she knew, and I put my phone face down on the comforter, and I just breathed. I want to be honest about that week because people always want to skip to the part where things get better. That week was not the part where things get better. I ate vending machine crackers and cups of soup I made with the in-room coffee pot. I called my 3 employees and told them the business was suspended, and I listened to 2 of them cry. I contacted a bankruptcy attorney who told me that given the way the accounts had been structured, extricating myself from the damage my husband had done was going to take time and money I didn't have. I cried in the shower because it felt less pathetic than crying on the bed, even though no one was watching either way. I want to tell you I had a plan by day 3. I didn't. I had a legal pad with a lot of crossed-out sentences and a growing conviction that I had been catastrophically stupid for believing people who had never once given me a reason to trust them, except that I loved them. On the 5th night, I was on my hands and knees looking for the TV remote which had slid under the bed. My hand brushed something that wasn't carpet. It was a cardboard box, the kind you'd use to ship something fragile, tucked against the back wall, partially behind the metal frame. It had my name on it, not the room number, not guest. My full name, written in handwriting I recognized immediately. My mother had died 14 months earlier. The handwriting was hers. I want to explain this clearly because I know it sounds impossible and because I know people will ask. My mother was a particular kind of organized, the kind that other people mistook for anxiety. She kept records of everything. After my father left when I was 12, she worked 2 jobs and raised me and my younger brother, and still found time to file every receipt, every insurance document, every letter she ever received in hanging folders she labeled with a label maker and updated every January. She didn't trust banks the way other people trusted banks, because she had been failed by institutions enough times to know they were not designed for people like her. And she didn't trust my husband from almost the moment she met him, though she said it gently and only once, and then let me make my own choices because that was who she was. What I didn't know, what she had never told me, was that starting about 4 years before she died, she had been quietly setting aside money for me. Not a lot, month by month. She'd lived simply enough that she could, and she had been watching my marriage with the quiet attention of a woman who had survived her own version of it, and she had made arrangements. The box contained a letter, a key, and a prepaid Visa card with $11,000 on it. The letter was 7 pages long, handwritten on legal pad paper, dated 8 months before she passed. She told me she didn't know exactly when I would need this, but she knew I would. She told me she had asked her neighbor, a retired postal worker named Mr. Meter, Dalton, who had been her friend for 20 years and who she trusted absolutely, to keep track of me after she was gone, quietly and without my knowledge, and to deliver the box to wherever I was staying when it seemed like I had reached the bottom. She said she was sorry she couldn't be there. She said she was proud of me even for the things I hadn't done yet. She said the key was to a storage unit in her name in Swannanoa, and that inside it I would find the rest of what she'd left me, along with the files. She always called them the files. The storage unit held $32,000 in a fireproof safe, 3 folders of documents I will explain in a moment, and a handwritten index of everything inside, cross-referenced, dated, and sorted the way only my mother could sort anything. The 3 folders were labeled him, her, and just in case. The folder labeled him contained printed copies of 7 emails my husband had sent from a personal account to Vivienne over a period of 2.5 years. My mother had not told me how she got them. I have a suspicion involving Mr. Dalton and a level of protective surveillance I didn't know to be grateful for while it was happening. The emails documented in my husband's own words the plan to absorb my client base, the timeline of the LLC's formation, and 3 references to a conversation he'd had with his sister about how to delay my discovery long enough that I wouldn't have legal standing to contest the asset transfers. His sister had known for over a year. The folder labeled her contained documentation Vivienne had apparently filed with the state of North Carolina when she incorporated her LLC, along with a printed copy of a small claims judgment against her from 2017 in Tennessee. A previous business partner she'd done almost exactly the same thing to. That partner had sued. He'd won. She'd paid the judgment and moved on. Nobody in my life had done a basic background check on her, and she knew they wouldn't. The folder labeled just in case contained a handwritten note from my mother that said only, if the other 2 folders weren't enough, this one has the bank statements. It's always enough, baby, I made sure. It was enough. I want to talk about grief for a moment, because this isn't just a story about betrayal and money. I sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit in Swannanoa with my back against a metal shelving unit, and I held those folders and I talked to my mother out loud for probably 20 minutes. I thanked her. I apologized for not calling more in the last year of her life, because I'd been so caught up in the business and the marriage and the version of my life I was trying to build. I told her I should have listened when she'd said, gently and only once, that she didn't think he was who he said he was. She had known. She had prepared. She had loved me so specifically that she'd written an index. I used the prepaid Visa card to retain an attorney the following week, a woman who specialized in business fraud and had, based on a recommendation from the nonprofit client who'd called me, a reputation for being ungentle with people who deserved it. I walked into her office with the 3 folders and a flash drive containing scanned copies of everything, and I watched her face as she went through it. She looked up after about 20 minutes and said, "This is thorough." I said, "My mother made it." She said, "I'm sorry for your loss." I said, "She was ready for this. I think she'd want us to use it." The legal process took 7 months. I'm going to tell you what happened at the end of it, because I know that's what you're here for. But I want you to understand first that those 7 months were not a montage. I was still living out of that comfort inn for the first 6 weeks until I could find an affordable sublet. I worked part-time at a catering company, which was humbling in a specific way that I'm not sure I can fully describe. Being someone who had planned events, now serving at them with my hands for hourly wages, while my attorney was doing things I wasn't allowed to talk about publicly, I rebuilt my credit. I reached out to 2 former clients and was honest with them about what had happened. One of them gave me a small contract almost immediately. I did it from a folding table in my sublet kitchen, and I did it well. My husband and Vivienne had incorporated their LLC, with 3 of my former clients signed on as their first accounts. Those client contracts had been executed using templates that were, in 3 specific and legally significant ways, derivative of proprietary materials I had developed and registered with the U.S. Copyright Office in 2019, something I'd done on the advice of an attorney friend and mostly forgotten about. My mother, apparently, had not forgotten. The Just Ein Case folder included the registration certificates. The copyright infringement claim alone gave us enough leverage that settlement conversations began within 30 days of filing. But my attorney didn't want to settle, she wanted to litigate, and the email documentation, the 7 emails in the folder labeled him, made litigation a credible threat in a way that moved things considerably faster than the other side expected. His sister was deposed. She was asked directly whether she had known about the plan to transfer my clients before I was informed. She said she didn't recall. The deposition transcript showed 4 instances of, "I don't recall," in response to questions about conversations that, according to the emails, she had been explicitly included in. Her husband sat in the hallway during her deposition. He walked out before she finished. Vivienne settled first. The settlement required her to return the 3 client accounts, pay damages that covered 18 months of projected revenue loss, and dissolve the LLC within 90 days. The settlement also included a non-disparagement clause that ran in both directions, which my attorney told me was standard and which I signed because I had already decided I was not going to spend the rest of my life talking about Vivienne. My husband contested longer. He had retained an attorney of his own who seemed to believe that I was trying to protect our financial future was a legal defense rather than just a bad sentence. It wasn't. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I filed. He was required to return his access to my business accounts and pay back the funds that had been transferred out of them. The judge in the divorce proceeding was a small woman with reading glasses she wore at the end of her nose, and she had a particular look she gave my husband's attorney each time he spoke that I will remember for a long time. I did not enjoy any of this as much as I thought I would. I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt tired and then, slowly, clean, like a room after someone has opened all the windows. His sister sent me a text message 3 days after the divorce was finalized. It said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know how to stop it once it started." I read it several times. I did not respond. I don't know if that was the right choice, but it was the honest one. Mr. Dalton came to Asheville to see me about 2 months after everything was resolved. He was 74, retired, and drove a 2009 Buick that he was very proud of. He told me my mother had first asked him to watch out for me about 5 years before she died. Not long after she'd met my husband for the second time and come home with a feeling she couldn't explain. He said she hadn't told him what was in the box. She'd just told him when to deliver it and how to know. He said she described it as, "when it looks like she's at the bottom, but before she gives up." I made him lunch, and we sat on my small back porch, and he told me stories about my mother when she was younger, before I was born, and I learned things about her I'd never known. She had been funny. He kept saying that, "Your mother was so funny. People didn't always know, but she was." I had known, but I was glad someone else had too. I reopened my business 4 months ago under a new name. I have 4 clients. 2 of them are the clients from before who came back, and 2 are new, 1 referral, and 1 who found me online. My office is a corner of my current apartment, which has 2 windows that look out onto an actual street with actual trees, which feels like an upgrade from the parking garage. Though I have affection for that parking garage too. I am not the same person I was when I found that cardboard box under the motel bed. I am not entirely sure yet who I am becoming, but I know some things now that I didn't know before. I know that my mother saw me more clearly than I saw myself, and that she loved me in a practical and specific way that I am still learning to deserve. I know that the people who planned quietly against me counted on the assumption that no one was planning quietly for me. They were wrong about that. She made sure they were wrong. And on the days when I'm sitting at my corner of the apartment desk with my coffee going cold because I'm working, and the light comes through those 2 windows and hits the wall in that particular way, it does around 4 in the afternoon, I think about her writing that letter at her kitchen table, 7 pages on legal pad paper, knowing she wouldn't be there, but making sure it would be enough anyway. It was enough. It was more than enough. It always is when someone loves you that well. There's a version of this story where I never find that box, where I spend the rest of my life wondering if I imagined the person I used to be, or if she was ever real at all. I think about that version sometimes, not with fear anymore, but with a kind of quiet gratitude that it isn't the one I'm living. What I've come to understand is that the people who took from me were counting on something very specific. They were counting on the fact that I was too trusting to protect myself and too worn down to fight back. And for a while, they were right. I had handed over access to my accounts, my clients, my plans, my faith, because I believed that love meant openness and that family meant safety. I was wrong about the people, but I wasn't wrong about the principle. The mistake wasn't that I trusted. The mistake was that I never looked clearly at who I was trusting it with. My mother looked. That's what I keep coming back to. She didn't make a scene. She didn't issue warnings I would have dismissed because I was in love and not ready to hear them. She just watched, and she prepared, and she made sure that when the day came, and she knew the day would come, I would not be completely alone in it. That is a particular kind of integrity that I am still learning to understand. She did what was right, not because anyone would see it or thank her for it, but because I was her daughter and it was the honest thing to do. She acted from her values when it would have been easier to look away. That's not a small thing. I'm not sure most people are capable of it. The intelligence she left me wasn't just the files, though the files were extraordinary. It was the thinking behind them. She understood systems. She understood that people who plan to deceive leave traces, and that traces, if documented carefully and kept somewhere safe, become the truth when everything else is being contested. She had figured out, on her own, with no legal background and no one to advise her, exactly what I would need and in exactly what form. 7 pages of handwritten letter, 3 labeled folders, an index, a key taped inside an envelope with my name on the outside. She was not educated in the way the world usually rewards, but she was one of the smartest people I have ever known. And I wish I had told her that while she was still here to hear it. And then there is the question of what I did with what she left me. I want to be honest. There were mornings during those 7 months when I did not want to get up, when the catering shifts and the sublet kitchen and the folding table felt like evidence of a life that had failed rather than one that was rebuilding. I got up anyway. I made the calls anyway. I did the work anyway, because the alternative was letting them be right about me, and something in me, the part my mother raised, was not willing to do that. Perseverance is not glamorous. It does not feel like strength when you are inside it. It mostly just feels like continuing, but continuing, when everything in you wants to stop, is its own kind of answer. The people who betrayed me have moved on. I don't know the details, and I don't need to. What I know is that I am sitting at a desk in an apartment with 2 windows and 4 clients and a business I rebuilt from a folding table, and the person who made that possible has been gone for over a year, and I carry her with me in the most practical way I know how, by being someone she would have recognized. Careful, honest, prepared, still here,